Welcome, everyone, to today's session on key imperatives for implementing outpatient strategies. My name is Ayla Ellison, and I'm the managing editor of Becker's Hospital Review, and I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. Now more than ever, hospitals and health systems are looking into site of care strategies and decanting low acuity procedures to an outpatient setting to free up inpatient departments and bed capacity. This afternoon, we have brought together a panel of experts from hospitals and health systems across the country to talk about their own experiences executing outpatient strategies in different models, whether it be ASCs or hospital outpatient departments, and share what to watch for and how to win in both environments with robotic assisted surgery. Let us start today by having our panelists introduce themselves and briefly comment on their own programs at a high level. And Terry, can we begin with you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Terry Fragetti. I'm the Vice President of Perioperative Services at Hackensack University Medical Center in New Jersey. We are the flagship for Hackensack Meridian Health, which is a 14-hospital system in New Jersey. It's the largest health network in the state. And we do about 36,000 procedures a year at Hackensack. We have 24 inpatient ORs and 12 outpatient ORs. We have 5 robotic systems. We do about 2,400 robotic procedures a year at the hospital. Looking forward to chatting with you today.
Thank you so much, Terry, and for being here with us today. And Kristen, can we move to you next?
Certainly. My name is Kristen OConnor. I'm with United Surgical Partners International, based in our Nevada market, cover also our California market and our Wyoming market, and have been very happy to work with Intuitive since February of 2019 in launching a pure in-network outpatient robotics program. We are using the SI robot at our surgery center, performed 146 cases in that first year, and looking forward to talking further about how we effectively moved into a pure outpatient setting with the robot with Intuitive.
Thank you so much, Kristen. And Jared, we'll move to you next.
Hi, I'm Jared Bement. I'm in Edgewood, Kentucky with St. Elizabeth Healthcare. I'm the system director for perioperative services, where we have 3 hospitals and 2 surgery centers in our area in northern Kentucky, just across the river from Cincinnati. And we have currently 7 Da Vinci robots with multiple service lines, mostly general urology is what we're doing, some GYN as well. Really only not hearts at this time. Nice thoracic program as well. I've had some experience with robotics back from my first program in 2008 with an S robot, and now to these 7 XI robots for the program now.
Thank you, Jared. And Trevor, we'll move to you now.
Yes, hi, I'm Trevor Castaneda. I'm the CEO of Baylor Scott & White Medical Center Frisco here in Frisco, Texas. We are a 68-bed physician-owned joint ventured facility affiliated with Baylor Scott & White Health and United Surgical Partners International. Though we offer a full spectrum of healthcare services, we are predominantly focused on the surgical side. We have 14 ORs, 2 of which are dedicated solely to robotic surgery, and 4 procedure rooms. We also have 2 ambulatory surgery centers that we're majority owner in, one of which we just implemented the SI platform. We perform roughly 12,000 surgeries a year, north of 700 specific to robotics.
Thank you so much, Trevor. Thank you all. And now I'd like to jump in with our questions. And actually, my first question, Kristen, is for you. And so in recent years, we've seen reimbursements increase for outpatient surgeries and certain procedures. So can you talk about the impact you've seen in your markets and the value of developing an outpatient strategy for your system?
Certainly. So similar to what Trevor just mentioned, we partner here in the Las Vegas market with Dignity Health, and our entire business model is really based upon having a comprehensive, I would say, site of service appropriate strategy. And so certainly when we're looking at reimbursements in particular, Nevada is no different than what we're seeing nationally occur. And I would say Nevada might be taking it even one step further and coinciding with our intention of launching an outpatient robotics program. You started to see managed care payers shift to no longer covering inpatient hernia repair specifically. So you have I would say more global drivers like reimbursement modification from a more open case to more of a minimally invasive approach, combined with a payer push that we've seen in multiple specialties. I can think of pain, certainly GI. We've all seen that for decades now. I think that that's really coming to visit the specialties that are more appropriate for the robotic surgery. So certainly here at our program, we're focused on general surgery, have a heavy hernia approach, and then really have gotten into the GYN market in the last, I would say, 6 to 8 months. But we were really focused on working with our hospital partner to be the most appropriate site of service, and an outpatient strategy really fit into what we were seeing as a managed care push.
Thank you so much, Kristen. And Trevor, I'd love to hear from you on this question as well. Just what you're seeing in your markets and the value of developing an outpatient strategy.
Certainly. So the shift from inpatient to outpatient isn't anything new. It's been a situation that's been occurring now for 5+ years. Obviously, as we start to talk about the cost of healthcare and rising healthcare costs and how do we offset those costs, to be good stewards, obviously, to not only our physician partners, but to our community as a whole, and our health system partners, looking for those opportunities outside of the hospital walls to redirect appropriate cases to an ambulatory surgery center is imperative, especially as we move forward, whether we're talking of moving from a fee for service to a value-based care model. I mentioned earlier in my introduction that we've recently placed the SI platform in one of our ambulatory surgery centers, and this is part of our push to start redirecting cases from the inpatient setting to the outpatient setting. And as Kristen mentioned, you have payer forces, payer dynamics that are pushing such cases, whether we're talking hernia or what have you, to what is deemed as more appropriate setting these days in the outpatient realm. And so what we're seeing on our market has been happening for quite some time are the development, whether it be from a health system strategy or independent hospital, and the development of ambulatory surgery centers here in the market to help ensure and align with market trends around appropriate site of care and outpatient-based procedures. And we're now at the point in time where traditionally we've been solely focused on the inpatient side and performing as many cases as possible in the inpatient setting or hospital setting, to now shift those to the outpatient side. It's both a defensive strategy and an offensive strategy, to ensure that we're doing our part to ensure physician recruitment, physician retention, payer alignment, and ensure that we're doing what's right for our patients at the end of the day.
Thank you so much, Trevor and Kristen, for kind of walking us through what your systems are doing and the value of developing an outpatient strategy. I want to talk a little bit now about COVID-19 and how it's affected health systems, and hear a little bit about whether it has accelerated your outpatient strategies. So Terry, can you weigh in on that question?
Sure. So in New Jersey, we got hit really fast and hard with COVID-19 early. And what we saw is our hospitals filled up really with medical patients with COVID. We had put surgery on hold. Our governors of New York and New Jersey put surgery on hold, as well as across the country with all the ORs. And so we needed to see how we could get surgery done for people that needed it and not take up bed space in our ORs, in our hospitals, and still be able to run the ORs. So really, robotics was the ideal platform, because if we could get more surgery done and get them out the same day, it helped the patients get done and get the surgery they needed, as well as it helped us maintain a smaller footprint in the hospital inpatient space, so that patients that needed the medical care could get the medical care. We also found that it was a satisfier for patients because patients were afraid to come into the hospital. So if you could offer them an opportunity to have the surgery that they needed and still get home the same day and not have to really go deep into the hospital, it really was a satisfier for patients. So being able to have the robotic platform in our ambulatory surgery center, we had a lot of interest, and that program really took off and grew for us this year. This year, we look like we're going to do about 385 to 400 cases on the robot over in our ambulatory surgery center.
Thank you so much, Terry. And Jared, I'd love to hear from you on this question as well, just about what you're seeing at St. Elizabeth Healthcare and if COVID accelerated your outpatient strategy in any way.
Yeah, certainly the national average with outpatient moving or patients moving to the outpatient setting, we've tried to stay ahead of that. I think what COVID did was give us another option to really push for our surgery centers to utilize robotic. We have an expert robot at the surgery center during this time, and we really talked to our staff and our physicians and really marketed it as a way to not have to come to the hospital, to have a one-day procedure, not stay in house, and really try to push for more robotic volume during this time. I think the other side of that is for just outpatients in the hospital settings is try to use the robot for those cases that maybe we're on the border of maybe I should do this laparoscopic or robotically, but with the data and being able to share that with our surgeons, that was really a push to use more robotic time during the shutdown because we had gone to just urgent and emergent cases during this. So did a lot more gallbladders and hernia repairs and carcinoma hernias during that time. And then I think, going forward, what it's done is it's really opened some of our surgeons and certainly the public's eyes about, I can have a larger surgery that only was able to be done in the hospital or felt like it was only going to do in the hospital at the surgery center using technology for this. So I think it really helped us drive for that.
Absolutely. And so we've heard about the value of implementing outpatient strategy. We've heard from a couple of you about how COVID has accelerated the implementation of that strategy. And now I want to talk a little bit about just some of the biggest barriers to break through when implementing an outpatient strategy. So Kristen, can you weigh in on that question?
Sure, certainly. So when I'm listening to my colleagues on this panel here, they have very robust robotics programs. I would say far more advanced technology than what we're seeing at our surgery center. And one of the things that we really had to be thoughtful about in moving into a successful outpatient robotics program is thinking about our program with a very small margin for error, we'll call it. And what I really mean by that is it's really a different program. So for all the reasons that outpatient surgery exists to begin with, we can think of a lot of statistics around maybe faster procedures, faster turnaround time, definitely a shorter length of stay. All of those things are very much true with a robotics program as well. So just taking some examples, we had to really rethink how anesthesia was delivered. If you're used to anesthesia in a hospital setting being performed one way, moving into the outpatient setting, we really had to think about a turnaround time that was conducive to an ASC PACU environment. That's just one example. Thinking with the mindset of physicians who are accustomed to using, I would say, more advanced technology. In an outpatient setting, I would argue that the SI is very appropriate for the outpatient candidate, for the ASA appropriate level. And so walking our physicians through this idea that we're going to work with you, we're going to work with Intuitive, we're going to provide a very high quality piece of equipment, essentially, to deliver the best care that we possibly can for you and your patients. It's a different conversation, and it really is a different, I would say, service delivery model than what you might see in the hospital. And so it just takes walking through the program with all of the various stakeholders, including our own nursing staff. Again, being an outpatient environment, several of our nurses will have experience in working in a hospital setting, and they just are going to engage with the robotics program overall quite differently. We took the program even, I would say, to an architectural level where we mapped out the floor and designed a way where the robot was never going to move more than certain inches in order to ensure that we had the kind of efficiency that surgeons and anesthesiologists were going to be expecting walking into an outpatient environment. So I think, like anything, it's a high degree of communication, moving through the various processes around trial and error, understanding what's really going to drive efficiency with safety at the forefront, and communicating all of these, not necessarily new ideas, but I would say maybe a more concise approach than what the various stakeholders might be used to engaging in at the hospital. I would say that thought process really was the most impactful in putting us into a successful program in this outpatient environment here in Las Vegas.
Thank you so much, Kristen, for kind of walking us through implementation and sort of some of the barriers that you ran into. And Terry, I'd love to hear from you on this question as well. If you could talk a little bit about the barriers of implementing an outpatient strategy.
So initially we started, we had put SI over in the ambulatory setting, and we tried to move some of our GYN cases that were benign and could go home the same day over, and some hernia cases. And so initially, we wanted to get patients to move over to outpatient to free up more time on the robot in the inpatient ORs, because we had higher demand than we had space on the robots. And that worked for us okay. But really, the success came for us when we actually invested and we got an X. So we actually saved money in the long haul, because the technology platform was the same for the XIs that we had in the inpatient OR, and the surgeons were more comfortable using that technology going back and forth. And we were able to save on stocking of instrumentation and some of those things that you get to have economies of scale and saving. And so once that platform, the surgeons saw that it was an equivalent technology, they really did start to grow the types of cases that they were willing to try and do in the ambulatory surgery center. And now they're doing pretty complex cases that if they start early in the morning, they've been able to get out the same day. And we've expended our hours till about 11 o'clock at night, so that we can do these cases and get them out in the same day. So we're able to do about 3 robotic procedures a day. So we're doing about 15 a week on a busy week. And that's our goal, is to try and get as many over into the robotic setting as we can. But initially, we did have a little bit of struggle because the platform wasn't the same as in the hospital. But I think once we switched over to the X, we saw savings as far as stock on the shelf, and the surgeons were more willing to do more advanced cases there.
Thank you so much, Terry, for sharing some of the success you're seeing now, and also some of the barriers you had to overcome to get there. I want to talk a little bit now. I'll turn the floor over to Jared for this one. But can you talk a little bit about how you look at the procedures being done and determine what side of care to use?
So I think, certainly the surgery centers have a different criteria set by anesthesia, and then certainly we want to be able to close at maybe not at 11 p.m. like Terry, but that's great. So that's certainly some of the criteria that we look at, but we really work with our surgeons to do whatever case they want to put on the schedule. Certainly a single service line or specialty helps out, because you don't have as much equipment moving in and out. So certainly our general days, we want to do our general cases, and that allows us to flow a little easier throughout the day. But even at the other hospitals where we're doing same day surgery and discharge home, It's really just the basis of the criteria for anesthesia and then where they're going after the end. And we try to just be supportive for allowing any of those cases that we can accomplish in that time frame. So I think we haven't had to limit really our surgeries on the outpatient side. We've had really good results from the data that we've been able to collect with robotics and look at shortened length of stay for even complex cases. And so these smaller cases, we've been able to easily discharge our patients in a safe manner.
Thank you, Jared. And Trevor, can you weigh in on this question as well? Just how you look at procedures being done and determine the site of care?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes back to a lot of what Jared's saying. I mean, you have to involve multiple stakeholders to ensure that at all times you're focusing on patient safety and outcomes of the procedure. And so, we look at what technologies are available. What you've heard from a lot of us is that we're moving robots into the ASC space. Where my facility, when I came on board, we had an SI model. We've since upgraded to 2 XIs, but our physicians were very much accustomed to operating on an SI. So when we move that to the ambulatory surgery space, and we sit down and have those conversations about what's appropriate to move out to the ambulatory surgery space, that platform is not foreign to them, and we can ensure that those patients are going to be safe and we're going to have a good outcome. At the end of the day, the advancements in technology alone, what it offers back to not only the surgeon but the patient, whether it's precision or reduced blood loss or improved recovery times, it allows us to offer to the patient, to the surgeon, the ability to do a higher complex case in an ambulatory surgery space that maybe historically we weren't able to do because the technology didn't exist. So there's a multitude of variables that we assess when making that determination of what's appropriate to move to an outpatient setting compared to the inpatient setting. But at the end of the day, it's absolutely imperative that you involve all stakeholders. It can't be a decision made by one individual because it impacts the facility as a whole, whether you're talking about revenue cycle, if you're talking about physician satisfaction, turnaround times are extremely important in this conversation. And it's complexity of the case and how long do cases take. I mean, ambulatory surgery centers, you need to be efficient. You want to go through as many cases as you can while being safe, but you need to be mindful of the type of case you're putting into that setting as well.
Thank you so much, Trevor. And I'm actually going to stick with you for our next question and ask you to build on what you're saying a little bit. So, can you talk a little bit about how your organization maintained growth and profitability with its inpatient robotic program as you were building your outpatient robotic strategy as well?
Yeah, so consistency is key. So we formed, and many who are listening may have the same foundation or concept established within their facility, but we established a robotic steering committee. The robotic steering committee is made up of representatives from administration, robotic surgeons, our OR robotics team, as well as intuitive resources and medical staff development personnel. And through this, we sit down and we talk and we dissect our current operations internally. We look at the type of cases being done, the cost per case. Are there ways that we can improve cost, standardizing tray sets, instrumentation utilized on the robots? And what we've done here is what we try to, at the same time as we're trying to build the acuity of the patient that we're doing, especially with the XI capabilities we have, we're looking how can we replicate what we've done inside the hospital at the ASC. And so taking that robotic steering committee and replicating it in the ASC to do the same thing to ensure that you're being not only efficient, but you're being mindful of costs associated with having that robot within the facility and trying to reduce the cost as much as possible so it stays in line with what you would experience in a typical minimally invasive procedure laparoscopically. And so what we've done here, it all is driven out of our robotic steering committee. And through that, we've been successful at not only maintaining our profitability because we're all aligned as stakeholders in what we're going to do and what direction we're going to go, but we're able to replicate that in the outpatient setting as well to ensure that we maintain profitability here, but there's profitability from the ambulatory surgery side as well. So it all comes down to consistency and involving the stakeholders and getting the buy-in from everybody.
Thank you so much, Trevor. So consistency, buy-in, involving all the stakeholders. Terry, can we hear from you on this question as well, just about how do you maintain growth and profitability within your inpatient robotic program while also creating an outpatient robotic strategy?
Sure. So we were lucky because we had demand for our inpatient program. So moving some cases out to outpatient actually helped us to grow our inpatient strategy because we needed the flexibility to have more robotic time for our inpatients. We had cardiac surgeons and thoracic surgeons and ENT surgeons that were starting to do cases that required the inpatient robot. So we actually had the demand and we needed to move the patients to outpatients. So that was actually, we were fortunate to have that as the motivator. But when we moved the cases to outpatient, we expected to see that the P&L may not be so great with the outpatient cases because there was this illusion that the robotic cases that we were moving out were our loss leaders and that, we didn't make money on those. So we were actually very happy after the first 6 months when we started running P&Ls, and we found out that actually the robotic cases, we thought that robotic would end up costing us the most. And when we laid out length of stay versus cost versus complication rate versus readmissions, blood loss, we were actually quite surprised to find out that robotics was the least expensive way for us to be doing some of these cases, for the gallbladders and for the benign GYN. It was definitely a few $100s a case less expensive to do it robotically, which we actually were surprised at. So I encourage people to look at the numbers between doing a case open, robotic, and laparoscopic, and look at length of stay as part of that mix. It really was quite amazing to see that the outpatient program actually stood on its own. And within the first year, our outpatient program was $500,000 a year to the plus for the robotic cases that we had moved there.
Thank you so much, Terry, for walking us through that and breaking down the numbers for us. It's pretty remarkable. And I think just encouraging others to look at the numbers as well. I want to talk a little bit now about, we've talked about all of your outpatient strategies today. And can you talk a little bit about if these strategies have maximized your investments in robotic technology? And Trevor, can we hear from you on this question?
Yeah, certainly. So our outpatient strategy around robotic surgery is fairly new, as I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, in that we just recently put the SI platform in our ambulatory surgery center. But I can speak to what that technology has done here within the hospital, whether those are inpatient or outpatient cases. Our robotics program started in 2009 on the SI platform. And from 2009 to 2017, we operated on that platform, doing about 300 cases annually. In 2018, we decided to upgrade to the 2XIs. We sent staff off to training through Intuitive. And that year, we completed almost 500 cases. And in 2019, we completed 710 cases. And this year, even despite COVID, we're on track to complete over 750 cases. And again, this is between inpatient and outpatient. So obviously the investment in the technology, whether we're talking about the platforms themselves or the Series 60 stapler or the generators, what we've done within the facility, within our hospital walls, we believe we're going to be able to replicate moving forward into the ambulatory surgery space as well, to ensure and to maximize the program itself, to allow us to not only do the surgeries we're doing today, whether we're talking the gallbladders or hysterectomies or what have you, but further expand upon that as we continue to invest in newer technologies relative to the robot in the ambulatory surgery space. So yes, absolutely 100%. We have seen our investment in technology grow not only market share, but provide a better product. We talk about physician satisfaction, patient satisfaction, lower cost options, high quality, good outcomes. It's absolutely there because of this technology. And we've seen it inside the hospital. We're starting to see it in the ambulatory surgery space. So as we continue to move forward, we're going to invest additional resources into that outpatient setting.
Thank you so much, Trevor. And Kristen, can we hear from you on this question as well? It's just about whether your outpatient strategy has maximized your investments in robotic technology.
Certainly. So similar to what we've just heard from Trevor and Terry, with the SI, we started off with 5 physicians that had indicated that they'd be willing to move into a technology that really at that stage wasn't what they were accustomed to using in the hospital. We grew that physician population from 5 physicians. At this point, we now have 18 physicians utilizing the robot between our general surgery population and our GYN population. We did, as I mentioned, about approximately 150 cases in our first year. We're on track to double that in this second year. And that doesn't include any of what I think we all call the halo effect within the industry, right? So we're bringing in those robotics cases, but the cases that are non-robotic that are coming into the surgery center, that's real value. And I would also, just to echo some of Terry's comments, we have far exceeded the pro forma that we had put into place, knowing that we were going to have I would say a minimal physician population to start off with. It was enough to make the program successful, but it's been far more financially viable than we had originally anticipated. And a large part of that just is based upon sheer volume, but also some of the cost containment measures that we've specifically implemented on greater efficiencies and what that has done for this program in particular, as you've heard, again, Trevor, Jared and Terry both mentioned, is we are in the process of looking at moving into a later technology, so moving into the X program, or I'm sorry, X robot, and our physicians are supportive of that. It would allow us to do a few more cases than we normally do now, but it's really emphasized a high quality program that is in an adjunct to an already very strong surgery center within the community. And then further, I think it's helped to give us an opportunity in the market to go out and have both an inpatient and an outpatient strategy. So similar to what Trevor shared, we put together a team that was really focused on being our set of robot champions. And we worked very closely with our inpatient partner to drive a strong value proposition, starting with patient safety at the forefront and moving through in order to ensure we had a viable financial bottom line. And we're seeing that now parlay into investment into the newest robot for an outpatient setting.
Thank you so much, Kristen. And thank you all for sharing your experiences today and insight. And throughout our discussion today, we've had the audience has been submitting questions. So we're going to go ahead and try to work through as many of those as we have time for today. And I'm looking here at the first question. And this person is wanting to know, what are your short and long-term goals when considering a site of care strategy? So what are you focusing on immediately versus long-term? And would anyone like to weigh in on that question today?
Well, I can speak to it. I think that our immediate is to see how many of these inpatient cases can be true outpatient cases by leveraging the technology and the some of the other things that go in line with the robotics, with narcotic usage, and or decreasing the narcotic usage, and allowing this length of stay to decrease. So I think that's one of the things. I think the other thing is of what we can get to the outpatient facilities. We can do more inpatients with the inpatient robotic units, and that's one of the things we're trying to have about 25% of our admissions be surgical admissions. So from a thoracic, colorectal perspective, we are trying to increase those to offset some of the loss of outpatient, not necessarily robotics, but outpatients in general. And so I think there's an opportunity to look for opportunities. We are in the process of increasing the capacity of one of our surgery centers. And once that happens, I expect to have two robots down there. Hopefully maybe one of the single sites at that point, that we can leverage that in that outpatient setting and really do most of our simple hernias and gallbladders and outpatient GYN in that arena.
Thank you so much, Jared. And we'll move on to our next question we had come in. And they're wanting to know if somebody can speak to the CMS waiver that was rolled out in terms of providing hospital reimbursement and in an ASC setting because of the pandemic. Any volunteers for that question?
I assume they're referring to the hospital without walls provision, and unfortunately, I have no personal experience with that provision. I don't know if anyone on the panel does, but we had opted not to go that route for various reasons. And like we've talked about through the course of this panel, some of the reimbursement strategies that we're seeing just occur naturally didn't necessarily cause us to need to look at taking advantage of some of the COVID specific waivers that really existed.
Thank you so much, Kristen. And our next question is it better to have multiple specialties operating robotically in an ASC setting? They said we're finding that you need at least one or two surgeons to make it work.
I think absolutely. I think at the end of the day, to ensure that you have more than one specialty on the robot is important to make sure that the cost associated with the robot is justified. I think there may be certain situations, depending on the specialty, if you're able to do a high volume specific to that specialty in a robot, it could make sense. But more times than not, two or more specialties utilizing the robot is beneficial to that center. It's beneficial to utilization of that robot, and is only going to help further grow that program down the road. Whether you're talking about staff knowledge and training, the ability to accommodate new surgeons coming on board, so physician recruitment efforts, physician retention efforts, and then hopefully down the road, the addition of additional robots to help align with the capacity needs that are coming through those doors of the ASC. I think again, is it possible to be successful with one specialty on a robot, depending on the specialty and the volume you're doing? Possibly, but I think for the benefit of the outpatient center itself, you are more likely to be successful in growing that program when you have the ability to accommodate multiple specialties on the robot.
Thank you so much, Trevor. And it looks like we have time for one more audience question today. And this person is just wanting to know, are you finding that you're getting reimbursed more for minimally invasive robotic procedures in an ASC setting? And have you realized any advantages of moving low acuity cases to the ASC and leaving opportunity for higher acuity for the main hospital ORs?
So for us, we get our ambulatory surgery reimbursement is our ambulatory surgery reimbursement. We don't get additional reimbursement for doing robotic surgery, but when we moved the robotic surgery there, we were able to realize we put sets together with less instrumentation. We were able to reduce some of the carrying costs of the instrumentation, and we were able to turn the cases over faster and get them in and out quicker. So we were able to get more cases in at a less cost per case, and then backfill that with inpatient, higher acuity cases in our inpatient operating rooms. So that's really how the profit and loss went for us. It wasn't that we moved them there and we got more money for robots as for any of the other cases in the ambulatory setting.
Thank you so much, Sherry. And before our session ends today, I want to take a moment to have each of our panelists share a final thought with our audience today. So Trevor, can we start with you on that? If you have one final thought to share with everyone today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, if you're not looking at an outpatient strategy today, it's something that you certainly need to start to look into. Everybody's market's different. I understand that. I'm in a highly competitive market with really aggressive health systems and hospitals and ambulatory surgery centers feel like they're going up on every corner. But at the end of the day, this is the direction healthcare has been going for quite some time, but it's been accelerated even more so over the last 2-3 years. And with changes in reimbursement around ambulatory surgery center space and realigning those closer to what you see in HOPD spaces, it makes sense to start looking at this strategy, especially when it's coupled with payer, you know, payer pressures on reimbursement and trying to get to a lower acuity setting for appropriate site of care, whether talking gallbladders and what have you. So this is reality. It's here. It's been here, and I don't see it going away anytime soon.
Thank you so much, Trevor. And Kristen, a final thought for everyone today?
Sure. Certainly agree with the points that Trevor made, and we're seeing that and living that. I would say, having had pure outpatient experience, meaning I'm not in that hospital setting, and I've observed what has worked very well for us. Utilizing the knowledge that our hospital partner did have going into this program was invaluable. As I've shared several times throughout today's session, communication and engaging the key stakeholders on maybe doing things slightly differently than how they're done in the hospital. So if we're looking at being the most efficient version of a robotics program, it is going to take a strong physician champion. It's going to take a strong clinical director. It's going to take communication that's strong between both of those individuals and then your robotics team. So also, as Trevor mentioned, that consistency really is key. And we've seen that make a huge difference in our program being successful on patient outcomes, patient satisfaction, and financial viability. So really can't hammer home enough the idea that you have a dedicated team that communicates frequently and is constantly striving to be the safest, most efficient version of a robotics program. It's really worked very well for us.
Thank you so much, Kristen. And Terry, a final thought for everyone today?
Yeah, I was going to say that if you're going to do robotics, you definitely have to do it as a team sport. And you definitely have to look at your data and constantly tweak what you're doing to make sure that you have the best outcomes, because you're really doing it for the outcomes and not just to have a program to say you bought a robot. And I think it gives you the opportunity, once you're working as a team and you're using your data to drive good outcomes, that you then have other cases that come along that are non-robotic. So if you have urologists, you're going to have urology cases. If you have GYN docs, you're going to have GYN cases. So I think the more you work as a team, the more your business will grow outside of the robotic arena as well.
Thank you, Terry. And Jared, a final thought for everyone today?
Yeah, I think to echo some of the thoughts is the robotic steering committee has been key for us to drive the program along with the volume. And I think that by looking at our internal numbers and our internal results, it's really driven us to look for more opportunities to improve our robotic capacity, to train our staff. We have treated robotics not scared to do it. Everyone can do it. We're trying to train it like laparoscopic was trained early on, that just everyone needs to know how to do it. And I think that's really leveraged us to be able to do it at all of our facilities, and not push off cases or not convert cases back to laparoscopic because we didn't have the appropriate staff or the appropriate education to do so. And I think it's really key to have the not just the organizational drive to do it, but to set up our staff to be able to perform the cases on a day-to-day basis for to get the patient results we want.
Thank you so much, Jared. And thank you again to our panelists today for sharing their insight and experience. And thank you to everyone for attending this session. We're now going to take a short break before our closing general session, which will start at 11:40 Pacific time.